Down by the riverside.
My union contract stipulated no more than 2 in a row, but all right. It's cool.
We know you can't sing, but hum along. Down by the riverside. Second verse is shake hands with your neighbor, and you can, do that. Ready?
Yep.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield
Down by the riverside, down by the riverside,
down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. I'm gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. No more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Gonna shake hands around the world down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna shake hands around the world down by the riverside and study war no more. Ain't gonna 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 study war no more. Now we're gonna sing this for the sake of the Ukrainian people. All right? Gonna shake hands with the Prince of Peace down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna shake hands with the Prince of Peace down by the riverside. Gonna study war no more. Let's pick it up a little bit. Ain't gonna study war no more. 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 Ain't gonna study war no more.
Now that we've got our juices flowing. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Hendersonville, North Carolina. I'm Stu Runlett, your worship associate this morning. All are joyfully welcomed here. Visitors, friends, new members, or long-term members, regardless of race, sexual orientation, national origin, or political preference. Do we have any visitors or guests this morning who would like to introduce themselves? Back there? Yeah. Welcome back. Yes. Anyone else? Okay. For our protection during the continuing pandemic, for today at least, face coverings are worn indoors, except when speaking at the podium or playing music. Please save hugs and handshakes for outdoors. Please use the upstairs restroom if you need it. If it's in use, one of the downstairs restrooms is marked for adults. In order to better assure everyone's safety, we encourage you to complete the clipboards that are being passed along the rows. In the event of a COVID breakthrough reported to the fellowship office, we would need to notify those in attendance that Sunday. Thanks in advance for helping to keep everyone safe. Charlotte Cargan has an announcement.
I actually have 2 announcements. On Monday, March 28th at 1 o'clock, we will have the first of 3 events on the 8th principle at our Justice Forum. Our discussion host is Helen Bishop. Contact Judy Bonner or me for the Zoom link and suggested resources. We have 2 short videos and a reading that we think will help you get through the discussion. And then on April the 3rd, our UU Justice NC statewide organization is teaming up with Drum to offer a virtual event for North Carolina UUs. That's also a virtual learning experience. And as a real treat, we'll hear directly from a co-author of the 8th principle, Paula Cole Jones. Register online, see your e-blast for the link. If you can't find it, send me an email and I'll send it to you. On May 1st, Helen will be presenting a service on the 8th principle. So this will be followed by a discussion session, and that's another opportunity for you to speak or ask questions after the service. Second announcement. We are hosting a workshop with Reverend Fred Small called Give Light, Spiritual Support for Climate Activism. It is on Saturday, April the 9th at 10 o'clock, right here. Contact me to register. His workshop is not about climate science, mitigation measures, or political strategies. It's about how to engage the climate crisis while sustaining our spirits. And we will have guided meditation, reflection, conversation, and song, fortifying our spirits and deepening our resolve. I hope you will all sign up.
Okay, as we light our chalice this morning, may we be reminded of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. We're very fortunate today to have as our guest speaker, guitarist, and singer, Reverend Ernie Mills. Ernie is Minister Emeritus at the Unitarian Universalists of Transylvania County since he retired from UUTC in 2015. Ordained to the UU ministry in 2007, he completed a BA in philosophy from the University of North Carolina at Asheville, a Master of Religious Education from Duke Divinity School, and a Master of Divinity from the Candler School of Theology at Emory. He began his ministry in the United Methodist Church, serving as Director of Education, Assistant Pastor, and Minister. Prior to joining UUTC in June 2002, Ernie was chaplain and instructor at Brevard College. As lead singer and guitarist for the Eclectics, Ernie performed regularly for his congregation. Today, he's invited Todd Hoke to join him, as you've already heard. Thank you, Todd, for participating in this.
Okay, time for my testimonial. Where do I start? When Joe and I considered moving from upstate New York somewhere else, when we retired, we had 3 criteria that we considered. One was that we wanted to be near Joe's daughter and grandchildren in Georgia, and the second was we needed to be near a beautiful place with mountains so we could do hiking and paddle our canoe and also ride our bikes. The third was that there needed to be a UU church nearby. That was really critical. So we contacted, back in 2007, we contacted Nancy Mitchell, who many of you know, who at the time was a real estate agent here in North Carolina, and she was advertising in the UU World magazine. So we contacted her and planned to meet up with her, and we did, came down here, and we liked Western North Carolina. It was close to Atlanta, Georgia, or closer to Atlanta, Georgia. And so we hooked up, and she drove us around. And one of the things she did was she brought us to a service here at UUFH. And we were sold. That was it. Everything fit into place. So to make a long story short, we moved here in 2010. The reason it's so important to me to be part of a UU community is that I am a lifelong Unitarian. Not only that, but I'm a fourth-generation Unitarian, which is very unheard of. My great-grandfather immigrated to Brooklyn, New York from Bohemia, which is now the Czech Republic, back in the 1800s. And he and his family were Jews who ended up in Brooklyn and became converted to Unitarianism when they came to the U.S. and were members of a church in Brooklyn, a Unitarian church. And in fact, his whole family came, and they were stalwart members of the church. And there is a Tiffany glass window with the Switzer name in it in that church. I've been there and have seen it. I've been with it for a long time. Even now, I was a member of the UU Church in Schenectady, New York, before we moved here, and my daughter grew up in that church, so she is now a fifth-generation Unitarian. Now, I've never for a minute regretted being a member of this fellowship. It's provided me a warm, emotionally safe, and welcoming home, as I indicated with so many people who were helpful and generous during my recovery, my surgery recovery. I've been challenged both mentally and spiritually through our services, workshops, and various training sessions that I've been through that were sponsored by both our fellowship and the UUA over the years. I'm excited to continue to grow and explore what it means to really live my principles and my values. These are exciting times for our fellowship. Let's all stick together and give it our all to make a real difference in our community and our world. I hope you will stay with me in this adventure. Thank you.
Now is the time in our service when we take a moment to consider the importance of this fellowship in our lives by taking an offering. Please give generously in order to help us further the values and work of this congregation.
We're going to start out slow on this song and then work up to a tumultuous uproar. Oh, hang in there. You ready? Ready? This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Hey, don't you try to blow it out, I'm gonna let it shine. Don't you try to blow it out, I'm gonna let it shine. Don't you try to blow it out, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let's take it up a notch. Hey, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. I messed up on that.
I'll read a short passage from T.S. Eliot's poem, Little Gidding. What we call a beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. The end is where we start from. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see all of you here. If you know anything about the Wizard of Oz, you know that Dorothy, that reading, we never cease from our exploration. We come back to the place we started and know it for the first time. That's kind of the story of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. She starts out from her bed in Kansas City in a state of unconsciousness, goes off into the land of Oz and comes back to where she started and knows it for the first time. I want to introduce some people that didn't introduce themselves when they had time, and that's my brother-in-law, my three sisters. They're back there on the back row. Now, my sisters, it's fine if you have them one-on-one, but when they get together, the three of them, watch out. And what a pleasure it was to play music with Todd and Meg. How many of you have not seen or read the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz? Aha. Okay. Anybody else? That's, according to the registry of movies, that movie has been seen more than any other movie in movie history. Believe it or not. And it won several Academy Awards way back in 1939 when it was first aired. And then it was played again for television in 1956. Anybody want to share the feeling you had when you saw that movie or after that movie? The emotions, the feelings. Anybody want to share that?
I was never more terrified of that witch.
Okay. It was the flying monkeys that got me. That's terrified me. Anybody else?
I loved Over the Rainbow, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I was just a little girl when I saw this movie the first time, and it was the first song I remember well, and because it remains my favorite song, and it's so hopeful and lovely. I still love that song, and I think about that, and I've seen The Wizard of Oz multiple times. Wonderful story.
Thank you. Well, just for that one who hasn't seen it or read the book, I'm going to give a little brief synopsis of it. So Dorothy and her little dog Toto live in Kansas on a farm with her Auntie Em and Uncle Henry. And Toto bites the neighbor, a mean old woman by the name of Miss Gulch, and she takes a warrant out to have Toto euthanized. And so Dorothy and Toto run away. And they run into a charlatan fortune teller who tells Dorothy that she really needs to go back home because she's missed by her aunt. Well, on the way back home, they encounter a cyclone. And Dorothy and Toto run into the bedroom of the house, and she's hit by a flying object on her head, falls unconscious onto her bed, and dreams that her and Toto are lifted up in the house in this cyclone, and they land in the land of Munchkins. And they accidentally land, the house lands, or maybe it's not an accident, the house lands on the Wicked Witch of the East and kills her immediately. And the Munchkins celebrate, and they're happy, and they sing Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead, and all that. Well, Dorothy's immediate response to all of this is, how do I get back home? And suddenly the good witch, Glinda, appears and says, well, if you follow the yellow brick road, you can go to the Emerald City where the powerful Oz lives, and he can help you get back home. And Dorothy says, well, where's the yellow brick road? And Glinda says, you're standing on it. Remember that one. You're standing on it. Anyway, Toto and Dorothy head down Yellow Brick Road. They meet a scarecrow who wishes he had a brain. They meet a tin man who wishes he had a heart. They meet a lion who wishes that he has courage. And then the five of them continue on their journey to meet the greatest challenge of their journey, and that's the Wicked Witch of the West. And I forgot to tell you that Glenda had given Dorothy the ruby slippers of the Witch of the East that represent power. So her sister, the Wicked Witch of the West, wants those slippers. But anyway, they finally get to Emerald City to meet the Oz. He gives them one more last challenge, and that is to get the broomstick of the Wicked Witch of the West, which they do. They come back, and then Toto goes over to this curtain and pulls it back, and they see this guy behind the curtain who's pretending that he's Oz, the big face on the screen. It turns out he's a sham. He's a humbug. But then he says, well, Dorothy, I'll help you get home. So he has a balloon. Dorothy and the Oz and Toto get inside the balloon. They're ready to take off to Kansas. Toto spies a cat, jumps out of the balloon. Dorothy chases after Toto. The balloon flies away. And in that desperate situation, when all hope is gone, that's where I want to pick up. Story's ending right there, before Dorothy wakes up in her bed. So Glenda the witch appears, and Dorothy says, will you help me? Can you help me? And the Glenda says this: you don't need to be helped any longer. You've always had the power. You've always had the power to go on. The Scarecrow says, why didn't you tell her that before? Glenda says, she wouldn't have believed me. She had to learn it for herself. So those two. You've always had the power, but you have to learn it for yourself. And then the Tin Man says to Dorothy, well, what have you learned, Dorothy? And Dorothy says, I think that it wasn't enough just to want to see Uncle Henry and Auntie Em. And it's that if I ever go looking for my heart's desire again, I won't go looking any further than my own backyard. So that's what I would call the gospel message right there. You have the power. You have to learn it for yourself. Nobody can give it to you. And it's in your own backyard. Which means to me, the way I interpret that, it's right here. You have it. You have the power. You have the power for what? You have the power to live a full life. You have the power to blossom, as the Buddha would say. You have the power within you to do that. You have the power within you to achieve wholeness. It's right here in you. I want to look at that story through the lens of Jungian psychology. And of course, I know when you interpret symbols, they're always sort of open-ended. You can interpret them in many different ways. Dorothy's journey is a journey without distance. She's not going anywhere. She's laying on her bed. She's in a state of unconsciousness. Everything that's happening to her is happening to her at a psychological level. It's all happening within her. And I'm going to look at some of the symbols, some of the characters, and give them sort of a psychological, symbolic interpretation. But remember, she's not going anywhere. Everything that's happening to her is happening within her own psyche. The first symbol to think about is Toto. When I was working on this message, somebody sent me that knew I was doing this, sent me a something they saw on the internet. It said if Dorothy would have kept Toto on a leash, she wouldn't have had all that trouble. But you know what? You can't put a leash on the spirit, because that's what Toto represents. Toto represents the guiding spirit. He's the one. Toto's the one that starts the ball rolling, because he bites the neighbor, and he causes trouble. So your spirit might cause you trouble to get your attention. Troubles are not always bad. It's not always good to avoid trouble, because trouble can often lead. The Chinese have a symbol for crisis, and they interpret it dangerous opportunity. Dangerous opportunity. So Toto represents that dangerous opportunity for Dorothy to begin that inward journey, that spiritual journey. And remember now, Toto bites the neighbor, causes the ball to roll. Toto is the one that exposes the sham behind the curtain, all that stuff behind the curtain that doesn't really mean anything. Toto is the one, symbolically speaking, that saves Dorothy from not recovering from the coma if she would have floated off in the balloon. But Toto jumps out, saves her from that situation. So Toto you might want to think of Toto as the spiritual guide dog. Everyone has a spirit. In biblical terms, it's the still small voice that's speaking to us. If we don't listen to the still small voice, then the still small voice begins to shout. And so we all have a spiritual guide. The first character that Toto and Dorothy meet is, of course, the scarecrow that wants a brain, and then Tin Man that wants a heart, and then the lion that wants courage. Now, these are symbolic of the powers that are within us, but they don't belong to us necessarily. They're not products of our ego invention. You and I didn't invent the mind, the brain. We have to learn to relate to this organ that we've inherited through evolution. But I didn't create the brain and the mind, and you didn't. But as human beings, we have to learn to relate to this power. A.W. Auden says, we are lived by powers that we pretend to understand. So we have to learn, Dorothy has to learn to relate to this power that's within her. She has to bring these powers that are in the unconscious up into her consciousness. She has to learn to think. And that's what the scarecrow symbolizes, the power in Dorothy to think. And of course, the Tin Man is the power of emotion. You and I didn't invent emotions. You and I inherited our emotions. They're powers within us. I like to think of it this way. We don't have emotions, they have us. We don't live our emotions live us. And we have to learn to become human, is to learn to relate to these powers, the power of emotion. And we're emotional beings. I believe every single thing in this world that you see or touch or smell or whatever, you have an emotional reaction to it. So Dorothy has to get in touch with her ability to think. She has to get in touch with her emotions. We live with our heads, we live with our hearts. It's not one or the other, it's both. Today, brain specialists say you can't separate thoughts from emotions. You can't do it. It's impossible. Well, then they meet the lion that wants courage. And that's what they need, and that's what we need to live in this world. We need courage. We need courage. And we need people who can exemplify courage for us, like Zelensky's doing right now for the whole globe. He's showing us. In many ways, I said to a friend of mine the other day, he said to me, he's showing us what we're not. Don't like hearing that a whole lot, but courage. Dorothy needs her mind, she needs her emotions, she needs a courage to face the greatest obstacle in her life, and that is the dark side, what Carl Jung called the shadow side. Mark Twain said, we're all like the moon. We have a dark side we don't show anybody. I once heard a veteran tell me that, he said, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is what we call upon in the face to face our fears. Fear is the greatest obstacle in any human life that keeps us from being all that we can be. Fear. Simple as that. I once taught the Bible at Brevard College, and I remember counting in the Bible over 360 places in the Bible where it says, do not be afraid, or fear not. So, the Bible says that so many times. I guess it's trying to tell us something. Do not be afraid, fear not, because fear is the great obstacle that keeps us from being all that we can be. We're afraid of something. My question to you is, what are you afraid of? What's holding you back? So they need the courage, Dorothy needs the courage of the lion to face what Jung calls the greatest challenge of any human life, and as to face the shadow side, the dark side. Unfortunately, in the Western world, in our part of the world, we have good on one side and evil on the other, and it's like this, where we get on the side of good and we fight the evil people. Here's the evil axis over here. We're gonna. To me, that's a faithless response. When you label someone evil, you just don't try to understand anymore. But that's the way in the West, we have. If you trace the wicked witches back through history, back as far back as you can go, what you find is they lead you back to what were in pagan religion called the great goddesses, particularly the goddess of wild things, with all the animals around her and the plants. And we know that the church fathers of Christianity condemned paganism, and they condemned all natural religions. And so they turned the great goddesses, particularly the goddess of wild things, into witches, just like they turned the satyrs of the Dionysic ritual into the devil and Satan. And so you put yourself on the side of good and you fight evil. Unfortunately, and according to the Apostle Paul, you put your side on the Spirit and fight your own flesh. And as a biology teacher at Brevard used to say to me, she said, I don't understand this, why religion declares war on biology. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Your natural being, accepting your natural being, accepting your biological instincts is part of who you are. Accepting the fact that we're human beings, we have emotions, we get angry, we get jealous. All those are part of who we are. To me, when you integrate the shadow into your life, you think of it like a tree that has roots that go deep underground that you can't see. They go into the darkness. But these are what root us in our humanity. Our shadows roots us in our humanity so that we understand that we're human and everybody's human. And it's okay. But the roots of the tree go into the soil, the humus, which is where we get our word humility. So when you integrate the shadow, you are aware of your humanity and you live with humility. You're less judgmental of other people and what they've gone through because you're rooted in that. When Dorothy throws the water on the Wicked Witch of the West, she just sort of evaporates. And you would think that all the flying monkeys
And all the guards would be angry because Dorothy has killed the Wicked Witch of the West. But they're not. They celebrate. I like that part when the monkeys were happy. And to me, that symbolizes that Dorothy has released the powers of the shadow, and she has integrated them into her life. That's what that symbolizes to me. And then the last part, when Toto draws back the curtain, I like this part. And first Oz says, "Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain." And of course he's exposed as a sham. Now, this is my take on that. You don't have to agree with it. The man behind the curtain is no different from the man who hides behind the robe. I was watching something about Queen Elizabeth the other day on TV, and her priest is called, his title is the Most Reverend. Well, he's not reverend, he's the most reverend. Really, we're all reverend. We're all reverend. So imagine your name with reverend in front of it, because that's what you are. When I became a Unitarian Universalist, I was over at College Walk, and one of my former members from the Methodist Church stopped me and said, "So you don't believe in the divinity of Jesus anymore?" And I said, "Well, yes, I do believe in the divinity of Jesus." And I said to her, "I believe in the divinity of every human being." You see, in my opinion, I don't believe Jesus intended to start a new religion. I believe Jesus, when I read the Gospels, what I read is Jesus didn't intend to start a new religion. He intended to get rid of religion. He intended to say to people, and he did say to people, "You are the light. You don't need the Pharisee. You don't need the scribe. You don't need the temple. You are the light. You can love God. You can love your neighbor as you love yourself." Now, how do you institutionalize that? How do you make an institution of that? You don't. I'll say it again. I don't believe Jesus intended to start a new religion, particularly the way it is now. I believe he meant to do away with religion. So you don't need that. All you need is right here, is in you have the power. You have the power. And it's right here. You have to learn that you have the power. Now, the last part is the part I love the most. And that's when Dorothy wakes up from her coma. And if you notice, she's wide-eyed. She's looking at things like she's looking at them for the first time. She's back home. She's just knowing the place for the first time. She looks at her Auntie Em. She looks at all the people there. And they tell her, she says, I've been on this journey. And they say, well, she said, I dreamed this. Her Auntie Em says, well, these are silly things, silly. You had a silly dream and all. Finally, Dorothy realizes there's no point in trying to convince them where I've been. And that doesn't really matter. What matters is where I am now. And this is what Dorothy says, her last words. We're home, and this is my room. And you're all here, and I love you all. That is the heart's desire. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Somewhere over the rainbow,
way up high. There's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops way above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why? Tell me, why can't I? If happy little bluebirds fly above the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I? Thank you. Thank you. In the original song that was written for Somewhere Over the Rainbow, the author was, composer was Edgar Harburg. These the first lines of that song were omitted from the publication of that song, but I want to give you the first opening lines to Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And this is our benediction. As the raindrops tumble all around, heaven opens a magic way. When all the clouds darken up the skyway, there's a rainbow highway to be found, leading from your window pane to a place behind the sun, just a step beyond the rain. Thank you.